1, 2, 3.
All right.
1, 2, 3.
And away
Bob,
we
don't forget
go.
your pose.
I don't have one.
That's it.
Yeah, we straight chillin', serial killing, pre-core villains on the mic, got you reeling. 5-star rated from the floor to the ceiling. If you catch a 1-star, no time for feelings. Got a team and DJ on the ones and twos. By the name Beelzebub, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all over two, and prepare to hear the legend of the straight chillin' crew.
What up, nerds, and welcome to another hellacious episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we kill, slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name is Bob. I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode 392, recorded Sunday, October 9th, 2022. Tonight we're talking about that new hotness, Hellraiser, the remake. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got our boy, Randu. What's up, man?
Come to daddy.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Ooh, that was sexual in nature, Randy.
Yeah, well, don't forget, it's also violent.
I'll never forget. How on brand. Look at you. So prepared for the evening. I love to see it.
No, that illusion will fade quickly.
Oh, no doubt. Let's see how prepared our next bud is. Joining us on the show, calling in from South Korea, we got our boy Soju. What's up, man?
What up? It's your boy, Pleasure and Pain Stains.
Pretty good.
How's it going?
I like it. It's going better now.
Got such
I can't-
freaky things to show you, Bob.
Freaky deaky things to show you from beyond.
Man, I got such freaky deaky things to show you, man.
Zoinks, my man.
The Cenobites are just stoners, apparently, hanging out in their mom's basement.
I'm pretty
What's
sure
up?
Shaggy is a Cenobite.
Shaggy chose power.
He is a Leviathan.
He chose Cheetos. That's what he chose.
He thought he was saying Powerade, but they took him to power anyway.
Power.
You say powdered donuts?
I'll have it. Next up, joining us, it's been quite a while, but everybody welcome back our good friend Michael to the show. What's up, man? It's good to have you.
Hey, how you doing?
Bravo.
Welcome back,
Happy
sir.
to be back. I'm extremely happy to be back. This is the first show I've done in like a year.
Whoa.
Nice.
Happy to break
Work you
that
back
seal.
in, yeah.
Yeah.
Popping that precious cherry. Love to see it.
What? Okay.
Alright.
Taking it to
I'm
the
sorry.
grossest possible
I'm sorry.
place instantly.
Okay. We got to build it back up now. Michael, you've got your own show. Why don't you remind all the fine folks at home where to find you?
Well, when it's up and running, it will be Horror Apocalypse Podcast. You can listen to us pretty much anywhere. We used to do live shows, which can still be viewed until copyright catches up to them on Facebook. I'm loving that even though I haven't done the show in over a year, every week I still have a copyright fight, so that's fun. That's pretty much about it.
Awesome. Yeah, check out Horror Apocalypse everywhere you get your podcasts. You're also you're very much a Hellraiser fan, so we're stoked to have you on this episode and to benefit from your expertise, man.
Very much so. Very much so. I remember seeing the first one back in the 80s.
Nice.
And I have just been hooked ever since.
Quite literally hooked.
Mhm.
Awesome. Before we get into the main event, let's tackle some housekeeping real quick. We do have our November poll pick currently posted on our Patreon website. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you get the chance to vote on a movie we're talking about this November. Juice, this is your takeover month. What is the theme? What movies are we voting on?
Whoa, my takeover month. So this is a director highlight feature where we are talking about Henry Selick films, 3 animated films that are Coraline, James and the Giant Peach, and A Nightmare Before Christmas. I just feel like these are really good gateway kind of horror films. We kind of talk about that a lot on this show. It's kind of like a lot of our Slack members maybe have kids and stuff now. And so they're ones that kind of had a big impact on me, especially when I was younger and stuff like that. And I thought it would be good to kind of highlight them and give people an opportunity to vote on these kind of classic films.
Right on. Bob, how are those numbers looking?
Oh,
Yeah,
Bob,
let me
this month, how are those numbers looking?
Coraline is definitely winning handily.
Woohoo.
Nightmare Before Christmas is in second place, and nobody has voted for James and the Giant Peach.
Okay, that might be
Wow.
that might be best for
snub.
now, because I've heard that some people think it's acceptable to watch Nightmare Before Christmas at this time, and so I don't want to hurt any feelings with that.
We all know that you can
with
only
that.
watch Nightmare Before Christmas at Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
course.
so maybe it's best we cover Coraline in that fashion then.
I watched it on the 4th of July, personally.
Yeah,
It's a very popular Chinese New Year film.
mhm.
Everybody knows that.
It's too early for Nightmare Before Christmas, everyone. Christmas.
Before. It happens before Christmas.
Yes, it
So
does.
get
So
your-
does
get your-
Elf,
Before Christmas
Bob.
somewhere, buddy.
And
Get-
Home Alone also happens before Christmas.
Get those votes in before the end of the month, and we'll see what movie we're talking about this November. Boys, we're dropping something every single day this week. Yet
Whoa.
again, Monday through Friday. You got new
Jesus.
straight chilling hotness. We're gonna walk down the line here. Monday, we're dropping a brand new Tiki video over on YouTube.
Bob
This
headed
is,
back to the haunted hideaway
we're going back.
She's a fancy flapjack.
in anticipation of a new film coming out this weekend.
Yeah,
Mhm.
a certain Halloween-related
Bob.
movie.
Tell everyone what the name of this cocktail is.
The name of the cocktail is the Ben Tramer.
Oh,
Whoa. Inspired
Wow.
after Danny DeVito.
yeah, the epic
Himself.
turn by Danny DeVito himself.
That
Mhm.
we all expect to see this
He
weekend.
better
Halloween
be in this
ends.
film this weekend.
gonna
Plowing
be in it.
Lori.
Just,
Good God.
Lord. That's the movie where
I
all
came for the
fighting-
plowing.
And when he dies, his body gets thrown in the trash.
Just
Yeah,
as
check
God intended.
that out on Monday. Brand new Tiki video. On Tuesday, over at Let's Get Physical Media, we're dropping a new commentary, another commentary, 2 in 2 weeks, back to back. This is also in preparation for Halloween Ends dropping. Mikey and I decided to record a commentary on Halloween Kills. So check that out anywhere you get your podcasts. On Wednesday, of course, this episode you're listening to right now will be dropping, talking about Hellraiser. Thursday, Juice, you got something else coming out on YouTube, don't you?
Whoa, Thursday, we're going to have another review, but this is going to be a YouTube exclusive. This is going to be something I'm going to be focusing on that's going to be more horror adjacent focused, covering some of the things that might not be quite appropriate on this podcast, as some would argue. But this one specifically is for Werewolf by Night, and the MCU is not allowed on this podcast, as has been deemed, so I had to take
Oh,
it
yes.
elsewhere. So on youtube.com/straight chilling podcast, I will be reviewing Werewolf by Night, which is the new Halloween special that's
You guys
streaming right
smell
now
a
on
butt
Disney
somewhere
Plus.
that's hurt? Oh,
And
I smell it. Oh,
I will
gosh.
Like
be
nothing I'd ever smelled before in my life.
I will be discussing it with a very special guest. I guess you can guess by that retort who opposed the MCU on this podcast. So the most vocal.
come at
of
me,
us.
dorks.
That retort.
At me
Yeah.
your favorite MCU reasonings for why that is somehow a horror movie. Do it.
We're
I'm
gonna
definitely
have
going to
Samuel
read
L.
it.
Jackson on the show. He's gonna be sitting in with us, calling all of us motherfuckers. So it's gonna be great.
Mhm. That's my special guest.
Check that out. Fuck you. Check that out on YouTube this Thursday. On Friday, we're dropping a brand new mini cast. We're dropping a new mini cast every Friday throughout the month of October. If you support us at the $10 level or above over on Patreon, you get access to a whole back catalog of mini casts. We have over 80 now, and we add to it every month. Last Friday, I was talking about Rob Zombie's The Munsters. This Friday, we're dropping a new mini cast on Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And I believe Randu and myself are talking about that little joint.
Unbelievably amused.
Yes, you are. So slam that into your ear holes. Also, this Friday, which is October 14th, we are having our second annual Chilloween party. This is a Patreon exclusive event. We are hanging out digitally via Zoom. And if you support us at any level on Patreon, you get access to this party. It is starting at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and we're going to be playing some horror trivia, and we're encouraging you guys to dress up in costume. We're going to have a costume contest, and we're also going to be screening a super secret Halloween-related film that evening as well. We're going to be handing out prizes to whoever wins trivia and whoever wins the costume contest. It was a lot of fun last year. It was a great turnout, and we're super stoked to do it again this year. Friday, October 14th at 9 p.m. And we'll post a link to join that on Patreon a little bit before showtime there. So that's the only way you're going to be able to actually join the Zoom hangout. Just give everybody a heads up there. That's pretty much all we got. But speaking of new Patreon subscribers, we got not one, not two, but three brand new Patreon subscribers this week. Holy fucking shit.
Damn.
Big thanks to Scarlett, Evan, and Cole for showing us some love over on Patreon. We really do appreciate it. Every dollar you guys contribute goes back into this show and keeping it alive. As is tradition around these parts, we owe all three of you the straight chilling salute. These go out to Scarlett, Evan, and Cole. Here we go.
Slap my ass.
Yes.
Slap me in the ass.
Keep slapping it.
God, slap me in the ass.
Oh, God. Slap me in the ass. Oh, God.
This was obvious news to me and Randy, and we are just smitten. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that is a high bar after the last several months. Yeah. So thank you.
Thanking you.
Killing it. Yeah.
We got a nice ass slap apiece, boys. Whoa.
How perfect for Hellraiser. We're just slapping each other's asses. Ooh, yeah.
We're going to have to give the Crypt Keeper more smacks just to get the recordings in.
That is officially all we got for housekeeping.
This house is clean.
Ooh. Who does spooky season like Straight Chillin' does spooky season? Whoop, whoop.
Ain't nobody do it. Let's get in the main... No! Let's get into the main event. We're talking Hellraiser, and we're kicking it off with the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
Bob, what's on the back of the code here? What's on the stream back?
Yeah, this is not in box form yet, and I wonder if it ever will be. So this was a Hulu original, straight to Hulu. So they might want to just keep it on their streaming service forever. I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. But this brand new movie with a runtime of 2 hours and 1 minute. This was directed by David Bruckner. It was written by a whole pile of people. Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski have the screenplay credit. Obviously, based on Clive Barker's short story. Well, it goes on. Give me a break. It stars a
read them all, Bob.
Too, and I'm going to read every single one now.
Give proper
read them all so I can use this bump.
Skip to the end.
Starring Odessa A. Zion, Jamie Clayton, Adam Faison, Drew Starkey, Brandon Flynn. That's it. I lied. I'm not going to read them all. A whole bunch of other folks. Plot synopsis brought to us by IMDb is as follows. A take on Clive Barker's 1987 horror classic where a young woman struggling with addiction comes into possession of an ancient puzzle box, unaware that its purpose is to summon the Cenobites. First time watch, obviously, this is a brand new flick. Gentlemen, would you recommend people check this out? Michael, why don't you kick us off, man? Do you recommend this?
My God, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a
I
new
mean,
bomb.
oof.
Oh my God.
Yes.
All right.
Do I look like someone who cares what God thinks? No, this is definitely a watch.
Damn.
Which
Randu,
phase are you on,
what
bud?
what about you?
Yeah, I would generally recommend this to Hellraiser fans, or at least, I don't know, if you like the original Hellraiser. I personally have only seen the original Hellraiser, so I'm deeply without lore, and I don't know exactly how this fits into the grander puzzle of the franchise, but I liked it pretty good. I think that it's a pretty good fit for spooky season. I think it could also be watched year round, though. I generally yes, just to say yes. Let's just go with that.
Got it. Juice, what about you?
Yeah, I would. This year we've had a couple different times where like maybe some franchises that have been stale for a little while are kind of getting revitalized a bit. And I think that's what's happening here. I'm not a huge Hellraiser person either, but I have been talking to some kind of newer horror fans, and this is a movie that they have seen and were impressed by. And and as I was even watching this, I was like, this is probably some, like somebody's maybe first kind of horror watch or like early horror watch, and they're like really impressed by this and engrossed by this, and I can see it for that. And so yeah, I would recommend it. I think it's a good horror movie franchise for this year. So yeah. Bob, how about you? Would you recommend?
I give it a light recommend. It's definitely not, it's far from the worst, like, classic horror movie remake I've ever seen, but I think it's also far from the best. It's somewhere in the middle. I think if you're just into the like Hellraiser world, it's totally worth checking out for sure. Yeah, that's it's a general recommendation across the board from all of us for
Hot
sure.
damn.
Hot diggity damn. Let's go ahead and drop also that.
Did
Let's
you
drop
ever
that spoiler.
dream you would be recommending a Hellraiser film, Bob?
Yeah, I like the first one quite a bit. Let's drop that spoiler warning and get into the rest of the movie. Here we go.
Spoiler warning.
Well,
Bob, you got a plot synopsis for
are you
Hello.
okay?
Yeah, Bob.
Respond!
Let's get into it. Here we go.
So you
Yeah,
don't
I got-
have a
I
plot
got it.
synopsis. Oh, okay.
I got it. I got it. I got
Yeah,
it.
let's. Bob's looking
What
quite
is it written on your
spiteful.
like? Did you write it in
Do
a
I?
tattoo on your ass or something? What are you doing?
Yeah, I got to get a mirror to read it off of my ass.
God
Yeah,
damn.
here's the full plot of Hellraiser 2022. Millionaire Roland Voight is having a baller party at which a young sex worker finds an ancient puzzle box. When Voight encourages him to solve the box, he is ripped apart by chains as Voight looks to the sky and demands an audience with Leviathan. 6 years later, we meet Riley, a recovering addict who is living with her brother and his boyfriend. Her boyfriend, Trevor, convinces her to break into a storage facility where they find and steal the same puzzle box. Riley gets high in a park and solves the puzzle, but manages to avoid getting stabbed by its blade. The Cenobites appear to her and say she must offer them another. Riley's brother goes looking for her and finds her passed out in the park. He accidentally cuts himself on the box, and the Cenobites take him. Riley researches the puzzle box and eventually finds her way to Roland Voight's old attorney, who tries to take the box from them as well. She gets cut by it, and the Cenobites take her ass. Riley then goes to Voight's mansion, and she finds his journal, where we learn the puzzle box has 6 different configurations. Each one requires a sacrifice. Upon the 6th configuration, the holder of the box is then granted a gift from Leviathan, the ruler of hell. Trevor, Colin, and Nora show up to the mansion, and the shockingly still alive Voight stabs Nora with the box. They all try to flee, but the Cenobites end up taking Nora. Riley finishes the 5th configuration and stabs the Chatterer Cenobite with it, who then gets ripped apart by chains. Riley, Colin, and Trevor make it back to the mansion, where it is then revealed Trevor has been working for Voight the whole time. They try to lure another Cenobite into the house as a sacrifice, but Voight stabs Colin with the box. Voight explains he chose sensation as his reward, which then manifested in a contraption lodged in his chest that twists his nerve endings, keeping him in constant pain. He completes the final configuration and traps all of these Cenobites in his puzzle box of a mansion. Riley retrieves the box and stabs Trevor, marking him as the new final sacrifice. He gets dragged to hell. Voight is then relieved of his torturous contraption and is gifted power. He's impaled by a giant chain and dragged to hell. Riley is then tempted by Pinhead to save her brother, but she refuses and says she wants no gift from them because they are always really fucked up. Pinhead says she has chosen the lament configuration in which she will live a life full of regrets. Riley and Colin drive away safely from the mansion as we see Voight in hell being transformed into a brand spanking new little baby Cenobite there. Roll credits.
All right.
Okay.
I'm dying to know the answer to this question, and I feel like we
answer
have the
is
expert here
yes.
on our hands. Michael, so as somebody who has only seen the original Hellraiser, can you tell me just how much of this lore is original to this film versus the series as a whole?
Almost all of it.
Okay.
Well, the movies and the books, the novella and the novel are separate from the movies. We do get a lot more touch into what goes on in the novels, the Order of the Gash, the Cenobites being more flesh than BDSM. We get more of that in this than we did in the original series.
Okay.
But the
All right.
configuration, the Leviathan, the 6 different rewards and stuff, is that all new?
They touch on the different configurations in the novel, but they in Scarlet Gospel, but they don't really go into how each one is how it really plays. For the earliest, which you see from Hellraiser 2 on, Leviathan was pretty much the level of hell that you went to. It wasn't necessarily a configuration. So most of this is all new, and I welcome it.
Yeah, I would
right.
say that's one of the biggest positives for me is those like the choices that you could choose and seeing even I don't know if they quite pulled off with the sensation thing. Some of the effects that they did with the thing in the guy's chest and it coming out and it healing itself and stuff like that. I was like, it's a little wonky, but the idea was cool. Like and then even the kind of how it resolves itself with her saying it's kind of like a monkey's paw situation, like no matter what I go for, it's gonna be fucked up. But the idea of people pursuing that and the lore around this box, and you can get something and then it really fucks you up. That was cool. I liked it, and I thought it worked really well.
This has a lot of biblical to it because of the whole Hellraiser thing. The biggest thing that I kind of figured out, probably my second or third viewing of this movie, was the joke about how you were given free will. By God gave you free will, but because God has an ultimate plan for you, technically free will is just a disguise. There is no real free will because of what he has planned for you anyway. They touch on that with this, where when you start the puzzle, it doesn't matter what you choose, because even when Riley said, I don't want anything, she had made her choice. She picked lament. So I loved how they kind of circled around with that and brought that theory into it as well. And I don't know if you noticed with Hell Priestess, when she had the 2 triangles on her cut into her chest, it's the symbol for Lambda, and all the choices began with L. There was Lament, Lore,
Lazarus.
Lauderant, Liminal, Lazarus, Leviathan, and Lambda on her chest.
Okay.
I gotta say,
did
she was
notice
looking
the L's.
pretty dumb with her finger and her thumb in the shape of an L on her forehead, though.
Wow. I was like, dude, I thought she looked cool. Oh, you're making a dumb joke. Got it.
Yeah.
What else do I have to bring to the table?
They just start running and they don't start coming back to the road. Smash Mouth. That's what
Smash Mouth are Hellions, as we all know. They are Cenobites in training.
That's what happened. That's what happens when you pick when you pick the lullaby reward. You just get a Smash Mouth on loop in your head nonstop.
Slow,
that would not put me
somber
to sleep.
movie trailer smash
Who
mouth
won't
pose
stop coming.
for the gritty
Did it
Shrek
make
reboot.
sense not to
Um,
live for fun? Your brain gets smart,
Okay.
but your head gets dumb.
Anyway,
I thought the
And-
Cenobites overall. The
And now
Cenobites
you get hit
overall
with the
look
copyright.
fantastic. I really like the design, especially the old Pinhead coming through, and like they changed the design up some for sure. But like I love seeing her, and I've only seen the first two original Hellraiser movies, so maybe this does happen in some of the later movies. But like watching her like pull a pin out of her head and stick it into a victim is just like it seems so obvious, but like I just had never seen that happen. I was like, fuck, that's badass.
Hell Priest did that in part 3. There's
Okay.
a scene where he goes into the church, and when the priest falls to his knees and he says, "Thou shalt not kneel before any graven images," he steps behind the altar and he pulls a pin out of one hand, drives it through his hands, pulls a pin out the head of and drives it through the other, and mocks the crucifixion as his eye in the
Damn.
way. So he does it there as well.
Damn.
goddamn Pinhead.
Her voice was like sending chills down my spine too. Like I thought they really nailed her voice in this. All their voices actually was pretty cool. I was just like stoked on anytime a Cenobite was on screen. I was like, fuck yeah, that's dope. Like they're nailing the Cenobites for me. I think the dramatic turns with like the girl and her brother and like her boyfriend, that rang a little hollow to me. That didn't really hit. It left me wanting more. But I thought like Cenobites nailed it personally.
You know, the relationship between Riley and her whatever co-junkie boyfriend or whatever, like that whole thing for like the first 3/4 of this movie, I was very much like, this is like, I don't understand what they're writing for this guy. Like he says he definitely believes something's happening, but then there's she's like, why don't you believe me? And there's just all these like back and forth. It wasn't until they revealed his employment from Voight that I was like, okay, this actually does make sense. Like I was really ready to write it off as just a poorly written character, but I'm not like it at least brought that home to me a little bit. It grounded that a lot more, because I was very confused about what his motivations were half the time throughout the first 3/4 of the movie. It was just like, what this guy, I mean, it seems like I never questioned that he was on their side. It just never really occurred to me. So I was just like, what is this guy fucking doing? He's just kind of like complaining and trying to send them in the opposite direction of where the answers are. Like, why would you do that? Like,
Man, I saw that coming a mile away. And in that
I did not.
this movie really, so not in the actual like style and design and stuff like that, but it kind of in the way that these characters act and the kind of story arcs and stuff. This isn't necessarily a slight. This is just how it felt. It really kind of felt like an early 2000s type of film. And it really kind of reminds one of the things that really popped in my head was kind of like a 13 Ghosts remake that came out with Lillard and stuff like that.
The Mansion reminded me of that a lot.
Yeah. I think part of that played into it as well. But like these story beats,
Michael is so pissed.
I really, the way that the story was written for the characters, like the human characters, really played out in those ways, because it felt like it was one of those things where we have this premise and we have this setting and we have this lore, and the characters just need to get there. And we don't really care much about them other than getting them there. And the weakest part for me was the general story of the characters and the characters themselves. I just didn't feel like they were particularly rich. I felt like their interactions were overly dramatic. I saw the twist of the guy, the boyfriend, like coming a mile away. It didn't surprise me at all. And so in that way, it felt like that kind of era of production, the way that characters were handled during that time.
That's interesting.
Yes, I feel
Michael,
that entirely.
Okay.
Yeah, what do you think, Michael?
I want to hear your reaction to that.
Why the fuck did you have to pick the worst movie ever fucking made? The 13
I
Ghosts
forgot
is
how
a
much you
banger.
hate that movie.
I didn't realize you hated it.
It's
I
so
hate that
perfect.
movie with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns. I
He wrote an
cannot stand it.
essay about how much
I'm
he hates that
aligned.
movie.
Yeah.
I'm aligned with that thinking. Also, like I partially agree with what you're saying. There's parts of this movie that I could see, not with the 13 Ghosts specifically, but like some of this, I think it's like the color grading and the dedication to, like, they don't do a lot of like pithy one-liners and shit, which is something that is very common nowadays, or anything like that. They kind of stick to the dramatics that you would expect from a Hellraiser movie, or that I would expect from a sequel to Hellraiser 1989, or
87.
reboot, whatever you want to call it. 87. Okay, I got
87.
that wrong, way wrong. Okay. But yeah, so but like there's some, like, the idea that there is a twist there, I wasn't really looking for, and I definitely didn't see it coming myself. But like looking back, I could see how you could, and that I could see sort of lending itself to that feeling. But otherwise, like I don't know that I see this as very much of an early 2000s movie. It doesn't seem that cheap to me. Although I will agree loose to some degree that, like, with the characters that we follow, there's not a whole lot. There's not as much under the hood as I would like for them. I think they're performed well. I think that, like, the dialogue is serviceable for the most part. I don't really like the Voight guy. Like that was a little too like cackling villain for me. But otherwise, I think everybody did a pretty capable acting job. I think the writing was strong enough for each individual character, but it was not. There's just not a whole lot to sink your teeth into for me, as far as I noticed, beyond the actual story being point blank told to you on screen. So I just don't know what I really was digging out of it from there. And maybe Michael, as somebody who's seen it more than a couple times at this point, you'll have a stronger viewpoint on that, or can enlighten us to something I didn't notice. But
Michael, how many
I don't know
times
if you
have you
can.
seen this film?
As of right now, 7.
When did this
Wow.
film come out?
Thursday.
Which was
Wow.
what, 3 days? I want a timestamp for the future.
It came out Thursday at midnight, so
Okay.
technically Friday. But yeah, I watched it twice. Thursday from midnight to 4. I watched it twice, and then oh no, sorry, 8 times, because
Oh, Lord.
twice on that and 6 times on Friday.
What? Not 10?
Yeah.
Come on. What are you?
I'm working on it.
Only
I'm working on
8?
it.
Hulu is loving your eyeballs, man. They're
Yeah,
just
man.
taking that to the bank.
This one
But
guy
see,
in
this-
Florida is taking the shit out of it.
God, we owe him fucking money.
We need a new
son.
server. The guy in Florida's at it again.
He broke us. He broke us. I kind of feel this. Sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
No, good.
What do you think?
I'll let you.
I was gonna say, I feel similar to Randy, what you were just kind of getting at there. Like, I wanted a little more out of the normal characters at the forefront of the movie, because like we don't really get a lot of Cenobites in the first hour, so it kind of builds, which is necessary. But I think they sort of touch a little bit on our main character's addiction there, and that's definitely like a theme they play with in the original Hellraiser, and I'm sure also in the novella, if I had to guess, where like people are sort of like chasing the dragon, so to speak, and like trying to recapture that feeling, and like in doing so, they're sort of like ramping up what they're willing to do to their bodies, you know. And like I feel like it's sort of like batting these ideas around, but it never like fully connects and like draws that through line. It's like they're almost just two adjacent things that never really come together fully. But it's almost there, you know what I'm saying?
And it also seems like there's more like I again, like I only have the frame of reference of Hellraiser from the 80s, the original, to back me up on this. But it seems like there's a few characters in this that are they feel like red shirts, and they end up being kind of red shirts, which is not something that happened in the original. Thankfully, like all the characters in that, from what I remember, there were definitely some people that were like fodder, but you didn't spend enough time with them to where you thought maybe there was something more to build on them. I feel like that you were kind of led in that direction, like to sort of like invest in these characters, and then they would just sort of like die off, and it wouldn't be, I don't know, there was more satisfaction, and the lead characters all had something like pretty interesting motivations in the original. And I think that this one, while everybody is motivated somewhat properly, it doesn't go any deeper than survival instinct. Almost, it feels like. I don't know, that's my big complaint, I guess, if anything, like, is that it just, I don't know what they like, the addiction angle just sort of like peters out, and the angle of like the brotherly love, or like the familial relationship that like sort of kickstarted this whole set of affairs, that also seems a little underbaked. In terms of the beats of the like story being told of like Cenobites and demon and hell and all that stuff is playing out fine. It's just like what's under the hood is a little empty feeling.
Yeah, I
I'm
took
gonna
it.
disagree a little bit.
Oh, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
please do.
I think we had a great story arc. We did have. I will agree that some of the characters we just didn't really care for because they weren't fleshed out very well. And like you said, there was a red shirt feel to them. But because of that, we really didn't spend a lot of time with those characters. There was no reason since the roommate was going to be a red
Nora,
shirt.
right?
Yeah, we
That was
really
pretty
didn't need to.
apparent, right?
Yeah, we didn't really need to spend much time with her. So she could be like the first guy that Julia hit with a hammer in the first Hellraiser. Yeah, they spend a little time at the bar, they get to know each other. She brings him up to the attic, boom, hammer, there we go. Kind of the same thing with Nora. They probably had the about the same amount of screen time. Good.
Oh no, I like I don't disagree entirely. It's just that like Nora is a friend of hers and she doesn't even really mourn when she go like I don't know
Yeah.
because there's a set quota of deaths as opposed like I guess that was kind of what was happening in the original too, but it wasn't. I guess I don't remember it being so explicit the number. Like I
Right.
felt like it was filling out the cast of people who needed to die to make this story come together, which was what kind of made her feel like I don't know. I like especially because she is somebody that already exists in Riley's world, and we're supposed to be following this character. It seems like there should be more to her, or that in the original movie they would have spent more time getting to know her a little bit, like give a little bit more pathos to her eventual doom. Whereas in the guy you're talking about in the original from the bar or whatever is absolutely from the moment you see him, it's like this is a guy who's here to be fodder. And Nora, I wasn't sure until maybe halfway through. I was like, okay, she hasn't been given enough time. Like she's on a fast track to being one of these 6 people that needs to die.
Right.
So
Well, even then, the people that needed to die were people that had little screen time. There was Nora, the sex worker, all these different, the lawyer, which we barely spent any time with, but they all had little connections back. And I think I actually had a discussion in a forum recently about this. Somebody said that the movie really had no plot. There was no story. There was no character development. And I think there was. You had Riley, who had the drug addiction, who fell on hard times and had to live with her brother until she could get back on her feet again. You had the story with the Cenobites. You had her character growth of her actually making a choice based off other people's needs rather than her own. So it had all the beats that it needed to go with, as well as actually giving us more Cenobites than we had in pretty much any film except maybe Judgment, in any of the Hellraiser series before. Pinhead only had like 10 minutes of screen time in the first movie. But because he was so iconic, that's what we focused on. That's what we saw. If you go back and watch it, it was all Frank and it was all Julia and it was all these other people, not so much the Cenobites. They were an afterthought that became bigger, kind of like Michael Myers in Halloween. He became the icon of the series. So
yeah.
No, yeah, I agree with that. And like it's like almost incidental. Like they're a little incidental in the first one, but you're right, they're so iconic they became the face of the franchise, all this stuff. And then like but in this one it's almost to their detriment that we spend so much time with them, at least for me, because after a while I was like, how much more monsters milling around are we going to see?
Well, I'm conflicted about that because I have a bunch of notes here and it really is a push and pull. And I feel like it's not just this film in general, but I feel like this film properly embodies my feelings about Hellraiser as an idea, as a series, kind of in general, where when I look at it, there's a lot of positives for me. I like the building out of the lore. I like how they treat it more like a religion. I like, and I even think when you think about the idea of connecting it to this idea of the addiction in our main character, I think it's kind of smart in that way where they make all these people who don't want to participate, who aren't seeking anything, kind of get thrown under the bus, dragged along on this journey in the same way that someone who is trying to care about, or people surrounding someone who is you know, maybe having the same kind of situation that our main what's her name, Riley, is having.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, having to support her, living in her house, and how people's lives can just be fractured and ruined just by proximity, you know, how close. So I think that's kind of smart in some way. Where some of the negatives, I feel like, it's like you're not able to necessarily drive that home because you also need to give a lot of service to these creatures and this lore and this idea of hell. And so, like, one thing I've always kind of struggled with the idea of the Cenobites, and why I feel like no film, even this one, has really kind of captured what I imagine or what I kind of like see as this essence or core, is in the first one, like, Frank was like seeking it out. Like, I want this, and pursuing it. And there was this flash in this movie where I was like, okay, this is kind of an idea of how I picture Cenobites, or this idea of not just Cenobites existing, but this idea of hell and this pursuit. When they had this girl and they had her strung up with the chains, and she did the needle through the throat and it affected her scream. Thought that was like a really amazing, cool effect, something different, because most of the time, honestly, people are just getting grabbed and ripped apart by chains. And this whole they even say the lines of like, your body will experience everything it could possibly ever experience. You never get any of that. You know, it's always alluded to, it's always said what you're going to experience, but that actual aspect of the sensationalism, not just the pain and we're going to rip you apart and you're going to die, but just even they tease like your brother's ending was sensational or whatever. Like, they always like tease these things like of what we're going to do to you or what this realm is, but mostly it's just people getting pulled apart by chains. And so I feel like the Cenobites are never able to kind of like live up to that full idea of what they tease you with as the horror of what the Cenobites can bring.
Juice is tired of having a cute Shay. He wants to see all the goodness.
Yeah,
Just
like-
saying,
all
like,
the blood
there's
and
only
guts.
so many times like you can rip people apart by chains, like through an entire series. I mean, it's
Quit
like,
teasing me, dog.
yeah, I don't know. I just kind of I want more scenes like the throat scene, because at least that's it's showing a creativity. You know, when we talk about a lot of horror films, well, when you're talking about Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
talk about what's
Yeah.
the cool kill? Oh, the sleeping bag, and different ways. You know, you don't want to just see people getting hacked up with the machete time and time, like for 7 movies. Like, that's just boring.
Yes, I mean, we do see this isn't quite what you're asking for, but at the very end, we see like a creation of a new Cenobite, and that's like the most we get though, and that's at the
Yeah.
very, very end.
Yeah.
I think
But- I get you. Yeah,
I get what you're saying, but also I think I want to call out that, like, yeah, people are being killed by the chains, but there's also like, god damn, there's a lot of like Nightmare on Elm Street foreplay going on in all of these kills. Like, people like walls shifting in the same way that the box shifts itself and things like the art direction of those things I think is really fucking cool, and I wouldn't want to lose those. I understand what you're saying though. Like, if they had gone with something, a couple other things besides just the chains, maybe it would have satiated that a little bit. But to me, it's like what's implied is always scarier. So I'm kind of okay to some extent with that, as long as they do have a couple of highlight moments, which this one does. So,
Well, it depends too on who is the one that is confronting the victim, essentially. Through the whole time, it's always been Hell Priest. He was always the one. It was his chains. Even in the beginning of this, it was Hell Priestess who pulled Nora back with the chains. That's their particular weapon. You saw later on when Gasp had Trevor and Nora's, or not Nora, Riley's boyfriend, or Riley's brother's boyfriend, I forget his name too.
Yeah.
8 times. You think I'd remember the names? But when
not a good sign.
they've got him, it was a wire. You know, you had the wires that were ripped
Yeah,
around
that's true.
the arms. It was when Gasp had, no, it's the Cenobites, I got their names. When Gasp had him down, she was using her wires, and you saw that with the way she was made up and so on. That was her weapon of choice. I think it's whatever Cenobite is there at the time, and we've always had Hell Priest, so it's always been chains.
Okay.
We never got
think
to
that's
see
fair.
Butterball and Chatterer and Piston Head and CD the DJ and Bob the bartender. We never got to see all these other
Bob
people.
the bartender. Is that one really?
Yeah, see I think it was Bob the bartender and then CD the DJ. Those were from Hellraiser 3.
I thought you were making jokes.
No.
The
Someone who's
movies are
not seen
making jokes, it
Hellraiser
sounds
3.
like.
Oh my god. I gotta watch
Oh,
that.
Bob
shit.
the bartender. I gotta look that up. Are you the butthole?
He just throws
I'm
like
Cinnabite Butthole.
lemon
like-
wedges at folks and like squirts it in your eyeball.
He comes out with like Molotov cocktails. It's pretty bad.
Oh my god, that's ridiculous.
That's like our
but
Bob.
yeah. I mean, I can
Bartender,
understand
we
all
call him.
that logic. To me, it's like it's got enough logic to where I'm not too bothered by it, and they gave enough variety in this. I had completely forgotten about the razor wire or whatever. I think that's a good call. Like there's several points that are pretty unique, and then there's things like Voight and his like little chest apparatus or whatever, which is supposed to be badass. But to me, and this is I'm coming to this conclusion as we're sitting here talking about it, I think he is just like honestly the black hole of charisma for this movie. I think he just kind of seems like
Yeah.
a different movie. He seems like a gothic horror movie,
Mm.
and this movie kind of is that, but it doesn't have that like, you know, like fucking Phantom of the Opera cackling in the abyss sort of like, or it doesn't feel like that comports to the Riley story. You know what I mean? It
Mm.
doesn't have the same level of grounded reality. And, you know, I can take like the insane, you know, complex that he's built or whatever. I can even take him in the first part, but when he comes back and he's got this apparatus, it doesn't look as good as some of the other stuff. As cool of a concept as it doesn't. It just sort of like it kind of brings everything else down a little bit for me. Not a ton, but a little bit. And when he's on screen, it's just kind of like, I don't know. He just seems like
he
a
was-
Hammer villain instead of a. Yeah,
He was the villain that we get in the other ones. He's the one that is actually seeking the
Yeah.
box and the treasures and so on. And
Right.
because of
Yeah.
that, you know, he was the Frank, he was the Julia, he was
Mhm.
the
It's an
bar
important
owner
role.
in 3. Yeah, but and this is where it loses points for me. They didn't focus on that. He became more the warning towards Riley and the gang of this is, you know, what's going to happen depending on your choice. No matter what you choose, like Juice said earlier, it's a monkey paw thing.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
so no matter what, he was the warning of no matter what you pick,
Yeah.
you're going to get punished. And I think that's where it lost points for me because they didn't use that particular character trope the way it was in the other movies. He didn't become
Yeah.
the villain, he became the warning.
And also, too, this
That
is a
makes
good
sense.
point. This whole elaborate plot, this really too adds to my idea of like the whole early 2000s things. It's like kind of the ridiculousness of some of this is like this is a rich guy. This whole plot, I'm tortured. There's an apparatus in my chest that I hate that literally like pulls my insides around constantly. I'm so rich. And all you have to do, he knows how to solve the puzzle. He's already done it once. People don't have to participate under any sort of will. All you have to do is stab them with a knife on the box. You telling me
Mhm.
this dude sat for 5 years in his house to crack this plan he can hire somebody to steal the box, to trick somebody to prick their finger and stuff, but he can't just order like 7 slaves that he just pricks one by one just to get the shit out of his chest in like 3 days.
Just
Order Uber Eats 7 times in one day.
slaves.
Uber Eats.
Yeah.
They
Those
deliver-
people have
oh.
it bad enough, Michael.
Yes.
Come
Yeah,
on.
hey,
Uber
just-
Eats.
Yeah,
have
Uber,
6
I'll have
slaves,
another. Yeah,
please.
exactly. I mean, anything. This dude with this amount of power and influence and stuff like this has to wait
Yeah.
5 years, 6 years for somebody to steal a thing out of his box. Like that's some
I
also-
bullshit. That doesn't make any sense.
I found it sort of interesting that like I came to the conclusion that like this guy is apparently indestructible, I guess, because he's got this thing lodged in his chest and it's torturing him constantly. And if he was like in agonizing pain every second of every day, why wouldn't he just like kill himself to relieve the constant tension? And he does say something like, "You guys won't let me die," or whatever. "Y'all won't let me die" at the end. And I was
Please
like,
let me
okay,
die.
Well, I guess he can't die for whatever reason. So I guess he has to conjure these people up and like have a talking to or whatever. But he knows that the game is rigged because he's got a thing in his chest or he's gonna be fucked either way. So like why bother trying to talk to them again or see them again? I guess because he's got nothing else to do. That's really his only play. But like it felt like he knows the game's rigged from the get-go this time around. So like why bother? I don't know. It's kind of confusing.
It's like when you have someone who gambles a lot, though, who's addicted to
Yeah.
gambling. Speaking of addiction, which is the kind of the
Yeah.
overlying tour of this whole
Yeah.
movie, it doesn't matter. They're going to do whatever they need to do because they think it's going to be different the next time around.
Yeah.
Fair
And
point.
also, like from a character perspective, that there's that, and then there's also the fact that this is a guy who canonically is like he's metastasized his affluenza. He is like rich guy, get everything I want. I've gotten everything I want out of life. How dare you try and monkey's paw me? I'll get you back by like trapping you here and blackmailing you into giving me what I want exactly to a T because I'm that smart and that deserving. And so like to that end, I get it. But I just for, like from a performance perspective and from like Justin, like you were saying, some of that stuff makes like there's some plot and iffiness with why this took so long and all that stuff. I agree. Like maybe like if they had just thrown in a throwaway line about how it's like Dragon Balls, it takes 6 years for the box to restart or reboot itself or whatever. Like just throw that in there if you really want to. But like, yeah, Justin makes a compelling point about that. The way he's like logistically written, and the way that he's written narratively, it makes it feel like he belongs to a movie that is far more fantasy than the rest of this movie makes itself out to be.
Way more
So
13 ghosts, if you will.
Yeah, he
Like
is the
even-
13
well-
ghost part of the film.
Well,
and the rest
okay.
of it to me seems like something more on the up and up, more like realistic-ish.
So not to ruin 13 Ghosts, but the whole like twist in this dude sneaking around a house that you think is dead, and then he comes out and he's like a rich billionaire. What? That's 13 Ghosts or whatever. Him
But
creeping
13
around the
Ghosts had an entire
hallways. Well, I
House
know.
of glass.
I
I mean,
well,
like you can stand in the attic and look into the basement in 13 Ghosts, and you still couldn't see him. Come on,
well, yeah, that's fair.
don't get me
But-
started.
But
We don't
I
need
mean,
to get
just
into
like
the inconsistencies of fucking 13 ghosts.
I
him
do.
also-
I want to get Michael started, to be honest.
him
Yeah.
also,
Okay.
yeah, him creeping around like that. Once you get to the people to the house again, go into this whole plot. You just need to keep them there. Like there doesn't need to be this whole plot. Once 4 people there, I got 4 configurations left. Great. All right, now stick you. Like it's just I don't the whole. So that really just makes the whole plot worthless. There's no
But that takes
reason
time,
for
too.
it at all.
That takes time too, because the once the box reaches one configuration and the blade comes out, you have to stick somebody. Then you have to wait for the sites to come claim that
Take
soul.
'em,
Then
yeah.
the box convert to the next configuration.
Yeah.
Well,
And so on. That all takes time.
But
did
even
that
so,
happen
but
though at the end? Because like that's that like if that's true,
Mhm.
we see Trevor die simultaneously as we see Voight get pulled up and get his reward for killing those 6 people. So
That was-
there a waiting period there?
When it converted to the Leviathan configuration, yeah, it did it kind of quick, of course, because we were running low on time. It was like 2 hours already, but it did convert kind of quick. At that point, Voight had the Leviathan configuration in his hand, so he got his issue. But the person who was stuck, Riley's brother's boyfriend there, she had to convince Gasp not to take him and to take Trevor, and that became a whole nother thing. But she had to stick Trevor with the Leviathan configuration to move everything over to him instead of the brother's boyfriend.
yeah, I guess this whole opening scene undermines that though. Literally that night when the dude asks for sensation or whatever, and he gets the thing put in his chest, there's an orgy going on, like in the next room, and he's got
Hell
this
yeah.
cage that he's built and this like underground sex dungeon. So literally the box falls. Well, time to fix this. Like, I mean, like, so I mean, because the story that we follow, it goes through 5 or 6 configurations within a weekend, 3 days or something like that. So I don't know. Just I honestly, when I was watching the film, that didn't even cross my mind. It's only as we're talking about it, I'm gonna have to be like, wait a second, that doesn't really make a lick of sense. And I think it's one of the underlying things to why I was like, that kind of feels like an early 2000s movie, because that crazy plot line to get people where you need to go kind of feels in the 2000-ish way. Yeah.
It occurs to me that theoretically you could just be like the world's greatest demonic assassin by just using this, like just using the fucking box, sticking the person you want to die and walking the fuck away. And then when you hit number 6, just being like, oh no, I don't want it.
Just reset
I'm
it.
good. I'm good.
Yeah,
Take
it's all
piece
good,
of
guys.
shit. I thought about
Good to
like
see
a
you again.
Dexter style, Batman style, creeping around them your secret weapon, have the Cenobites take you away. But
You
then
don't even have to be there. Just like and you can like kill Cenobites that way. I thought that was like kind of cool at first, but I was like, but that's a whole slew of other questions I don't even really want to
You just kill them
think
all.
about.
The puzzle box itself, the lament configuration, would find a way away from you, though. Like when
I guess that's true.
When they say, like, for example, Hellraiser 1, I think it was Hellraiser 1, when Frank is getting the box and the guy tells him it's always been yours. It will find its way to the next person who is seeking what it needs to feed. I think if you're it's part of that whole supernatural aspect of it.
There's so many like ground rules you kind of like.
That does
this movie
make
in
sense,
particular,
though.
like it makes it does make sense. It's just like you have to dig in with some of that knowledge to really get there. I don't know, like,
because also it seems it's like part of their fetish, I guess. Because no matter what they get her, even when she picks Lament or whatever, she's delighted by it. Like, ooh,
So
you're gonna
painful
suffer,
and therefore so pleasurable. I loved it.
dude. I cannot think or talk about Hellraiser without thinking about that Rick and Morty episode, which kills me every time.
It's pretty
Have you
great.
seen that, Michael?
I have not. No.
Oh my God.
It's worth watching.
It's so
I don't know.
It's somewhere in season 4, but they play off the whole idea of like, but if you like it, don't you hate it? But if you hate it, don't you like it? Like they can't ever have they can't ever actually make any progress because they're like, oh yeah, it's so pleasurable. Oh, but I hate it because it's pleasurable. Oh, but that's pleasurable. It's so funny.
Damn.
It's fun.
It's a good episode.
Anyway, but
yeah,
didn't mean to derail with that, but as if we have very strong rails to begin with.
So one thing I didn't want to do was just like pick on something and like bitch about it, which is something I've kind of done. The House. Okay, so this is the director who made The Night House, which I think I did a mini episode on last year, and was one of my biggest benefits of that house or that movie was the design of that house, like just the design. This house is really cool, or just like the set pieces that they play with in this film.
The art direction in general is great in this. The box looks awesome.
The box looks
awesome.
The house looks awesome. I love the geometry around it. And I love, like in the end with the thing coming out of the sky, but he's got these things trapped in these geometric cages, and then the glass moves, and all just looks so fantastic. The design looks great. That's it.
When I first saw the mothership or whatever come down, I immediately thought about Star Fox 64. That's where my head went.
Do a barrel roll, bitch.
Yeah, I mean that is a level of fucking Star Fox 64. I thought that was a little strange, but not any more or less strange than what I would expect from Hellraiser franchise, I guess. Yeah, like I also like I don't want to give the impression either that I'm like particularly down on this movie, because I'm not. There's a couple of aspects of it that I've already mentioned that bring it down and kind of like dampen it a little bit. But overall, like it's a fun journey, and like for it to be a 2-hour movie and for me not to feel so dogged down by the runtime, like that's a pretty good That's a pretty good bragging right, I think. Like, not every movie can do that, and I'm usually the guy who's like okay with longer run time so long as it's servicing something. And I think that every part of this movie, even if it's a little thin narratively for my tastes, like in terms of characters, I still think that it is very engaging throughout for the most part.
Mm.
So I got to praise that like heavily. It would be really easy for a 2-hour movie that features so much of the monsters milling around and so much of, people like just sitting around confused and yelling at each other. Like it didn't feel its runtime to me.
Mm. I also
it
love.
is.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's about time to land the plane here, unless you guys have any major points you want to touch on real quick.
Well, there was one more thing I wanted to ask Michael, but also in
Yeah.
this point of like, I really like the idea of like you get to see in this Hellraiser how the Cenobites are born through this lore of like you choose power, and that's when they might be somewhat limited, and this is the idea of like inflicting pain on others is, that makes sense. It makes sense because then you could imagine this Voight guy or whatever being a Cenobite and him taking great pleasure in that because he's done it in his regular life too. So that's kind of cool. But also so we're missing. There's one, I can't remember what it is, Michael. So what are so we have lament. So rewards wise, you could resurrect somebody, which would probably mean that they're fucked up. We could guess. We don't see it, but they tease it a little bit. They're probably fucked up in some way. Resurrection. Lament is just you have to live with the regret. Power is you turn into a Cenobite. The pleasure or sensation or whatever is the shit fucking your body constantly, and that's terrible. And then we're missing
Knowledge.
2 more.
Love.
There were I think they only covered 3 or 4 in the movie, and then there were 1 or 2 or 3 that they didn't, but that could be what leads into possible
Okay.
sequels. Like for example, lore was one of them, or
Lore.
knowledge.
Okay.
And that was, you could speculate that what you would go kind of eldritch horror kind of aspect, and they would just flood you with knowledge to the point where you go insane. And forget the other ones. Laudurant, lore, lament. But there were ones that we didn't cover yet, and if I tried to read the book, I tried to read the book.
I'm pretty sure Love was one of them. I could be wrong.
Love, but I think they worded it differently at the end when Hell Priestess was reading it out.
Probably.
Okay.
Let me see if I can remember those.
I like that aspect though, because that again, adding to the lore, it's one of those things that once a film's over and I'm thinking about a film, it makes me create my own ideas. It makes my imagination start to go wild. And any movie that makes your imagination spark or, wants you to dive deeper into it, that's a plus in my book. And I thought that was a cool aspect of it.
I refuse to imagine things.
It was lament, lore, laudurant, liminal, Lazarus, and Leviathan.
The hell is laudurant? Wow. What is that?
I don't know. I've never heard that.
I just wrote it down.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
We'll have to
go back.
I guess those translate to, in some way, life, knowledge, love, sensation, resurrection, and power.
So life would be one of them that could be like you live forever. But then that's kind of like the sensation. I don't know. It's cool to think about though. I like that aspect of like it also kind of made me think of a video game of like, oh, I gotta get all the level. I gotta see what each one of the each one of the
gotta see the hidden
configuration gives
content.
you.
Gotta 100% this bitch.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and rate this thing out of 5. Michael, why don't you kick us off, man? How do you feel about Hellraiser 2022?
I went into this expecting a remake of the first one because that's kind of the way I remembered it being marketed. Was it was going to be a remake and more towards Barker's vision. It was going to be more like Hellbound Heart, and I wasn't sure how they were going to do that because Hellbound Heart and Hellraiser 1 are almost page for page, scene for scene as it went through. They changed some things like it wasn't father-daughter, they were actually best friends and things like that. But other than that, the way it played out was almost minute for minute. I wasn't sure how they were going to do this. I was extremely pleasantly surprised when I started watching it, got over my first 10 minutes of this isn't the same thing, what's going on, to wow, I love the direction Barker went with this. It's more like Scarlet Gospel, where they delved into the Order of the Gash, where they delved into creation of the Cenobites, where they delved into more the body being a art piece rather than a BDSM, kink freak, and they Barker was very adamant or very open about his sexuality. He was very adamant about his BDSM side, and that's spilled into the direction, the artistic direction of the Cenobites in the first 10 movies. This was going more towards his envisioning of what the Cenobites really were, and the body as a piece of art, and how it can be twisted and made into another piece of art, and so on. And I loved that. Everything about this movie I actually really enjoyed, even the weak storyline and cliche twist. I loved it. It fit with the whole aspect of Hellraiser. So for me, yes, it can be a little weak and pull you out of the story a bit when it's so cliche and predictable that, oh my God, Trevor's going to betray them. And, you could, like Juice said, you could see it coming a mile away. That didn't bother me. By the end of my first viewing, I was like, see, I knew it. I knew he was going to fuck him over. And it was great. So when I went into the second viewing and the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way up, I knew it was coming, and it didn't matter. It was just the same as the first time I saw it. I loved seeing the Cenobites made from flesh, like the scene where Hell Priestess is walking at the end and it shows just her feet. Then you can kind of catch a glimpse of what would be like her cape. And when you think for a second, that's actually just skin hanging down and being draped. It was such an impact. I loved it. The creation of we get to see the creation of a Cenobite more in line with the Order of the Gash, as opposed to what we got in, say, Hellraiser 4, when the twins twisted together and stuff like that. There was a reasoning behind it that we got to see in this one that we didn't in the others. All in all, this is an amazing story. I love it. I'm giving it a 4.5.
All right, 4.5 from Michael. Juice, what about you?
Yeah, I generally like this movie. I've never been a big Hellraiser guy, even the original one. I always just kind of wanted more from the Cenobites in what was teased. And I think one thing, I really like movies that deal with some different interpretation of hell, or aspects or ideas of what hell could be. And so I always found the ideas that Hellraiser presented always a lot more intriguing than what I ever got on the screen. And so in this way, I was really digging this film in its lore, it's building it out. Like I said, the set pieces were great. I a couple notes. I was like, I would absolutely not be able to solve this puzzle. I like watching the
Unless
it wants you
to.
That's the thing. The puzzle always wants you to. So regardless of if you think you can't, the puzzle will guide you to make sure that it
solves
you can
itself.
solve it.
I love watching people turn it and be like, "Oh yeah, I got it." And I was like, "What? What the fuck? That looks like the same side you just twisted." Would not be able to solve that. I love the religious aspect of it, because I like also to in the same way of like, what's a different way you can like show hell and angels, and I like that they were referred to as angels in that way of treating it more like a religion. And what would that religion look like? These patterns, this geometry, these areas like demonic cathedrals. That was kind of, I like that idea. I did write the first hour kind of boring. None of these characters I really felt like attached to, because the main character is very flawed, and like the interactions that she has with people is very like overly dramatic in my opinion. They're arguing that they have, like, he freaks out because she's like drunk, and like it's not so unbelievable, but it just, I don't know, nothing about these characters really pulled me in, and their story and their whole storyline was like the weakest aspect to me. I wrote, Bob's got to love these extra teeth. He's a teeth guy. Old Shatterer. Trevor saw it coming a mile away. Changing the pitch of the screen with the needle, dope. Overall, I was positive on this movie. I don't know. I thought it was a little long, but so I don't know how much rewatchability it has. I'm not gonna watch it 6 times this year, or like Michael, but or 7 or 8 times. But I did enjoy the ride, and as being someone who's like not a big Hellraiser guy, I thought like, wow, this is a movie that has kept my attention and intrigued me and given me a lot more than I ever really cared about for Hellraiser. So that's a plus for me. I think overall I'm gonna give it a 3-star. Were there Yabos in this film?
You know what I'm thinking? That there's different streams out there, because I've heard some people say that in the opening sex scene that yes, you could see it. But
Okay.
again, the number of times I've seen it and I thought Odessa was extremely hot, I actually looked for it.
Agreed.
Okay.
I didn't see any.
Okay. All right. So I won't give half star for the opposite. If anybody can correct me, then Bob will change the book next week, of course. But
Totally.
for now,
yeah,
it's
I don't think there was either.
for now it's
so
a 3-star.
3. Okay,
Yeah.
3. 3 from Juice.
Bob, out of
Yeah.
5, Hellraiser. How you feeling?
I'm kind of down the middle on this one. I don't. There's something about the interpersonal storyline that we get between the brother sister, and then Riley and her like fake ass boyfriend, that feels. I think it's a combination of like their like overly dramatic performances, and also like the very slick, like squeaky clean presentation of this movie that reminds me of like a CW show or something. It feels like not like a Hellraiser movie for the first, I don't know, 45 minutes or something. And then we obviously start seeing the Cenobites walking around and stuff. You kind of get there eventually. But it feels like too clean and too polished and too melodramatic for me to like really buy into the story. And when the Cenobites do show up, they look badass and they sound like spot on. And I'm there for it. But as soon as they vanish, I feel like I'm left with these characters that I just can't relate to, and they feel like they're in a different movie. And it feels weird and kind of hollow, and it leaves me wanting. And I definitely felt the runtime because of that, because I don't think you see Pinhead until like, I don't know, 70 minutes in. Like it takes its time for sure. And I get wanting to like slowly ramp up the tension and stuff, and I don't hate that idea whatsoever, but like the characters weren't landing their performances enough for me to like be chill with the 2 hours, with an hour of them just doing whatever they're doing. So I don't know. I think I'd give this a 2.5, but at the very end, like the very, very end, where we see a fresh Cenobite coming to, we get some Cenodong, some Cinehog, if you will. So I got to give a half star for that.
Didn't they rip off the Cenodong?
Man's got a code.
There's definitely like a fake like fleshy lump. It's not, but I still gotta give it some, right?
Points for
Right?
the fleshy lump. Of
Half
course.
star for the fleshy lump. Bob's code, of course.
That's
The
man.
hellish
the
lump
nudie
of
nudge.
flesh.
Man, and
Yeah.
people give me shit for the Yabos. Damn, come on. I want to see some
So,
shade thrown at Bob this week on the Slack.
But I prefer life in the shade, buddy. That's a 3 from Bob. Randu, how do you feel?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I think what I feel about this movie is as follows.
So painful and therefore so pleasurable. I loved it.
Yeah,
Got it.
I like this movie a lot. I don't think it's a perfect movie by any means. And I think that there's some interesting conversations that we had here today that sort of like solidified where I land on this thing. There was some conversation about the way that the Cenobites are designed. I actually it didn't occur to me how different they actually are from the original series, or at least the original film. But yeah, they definitely do have more body modulation going on. And Michael, you said the phrase "body as art" or something along those lines, and that really oh yeah, totally. And this is kind of like this is the second film this year that I've seen that focuses on that. Not when I immediately started thinking about Crimes of the Future, which I also really liked. I really like that as sort of like this sort of like body mutilation as art sort of like approach to things, like, or at least this concept. Yeah, it's a Cronenberg thing.
It's super
just
sexy.
I don't. Yeah. Oh, it's so hot.
Real
5
horny.
points for that. No, I just thought it was like interesting that's come up so like explicitly in that movie earlier this year, and then here we have this kind of doing the same thing. You're totally right about that. Overall, my problems are like what I've already laid out. Like to me, the story was just a little thinner than I want it to be for the main characters. I really liked Riley. I really liked the performance by her, and I wanted to see I wanted them to really pay off the addiction angle or something. And like, to me, it felt like compared to the original, there was like this titillation to the motivation of both Frank and the wife, I can't remember her name. Julia, thank you. And like what they really like she couldn't help herself but to help this man that she's like desperately in love with against, all logic, all that sort of thing. It doesn't feel like there's that kind of pull towards the box in this one, and maybe it's supposed to be there, but I just didn't feel it. I know she's trying to resurrect her brother, but most of what we saw between her and her brother was like just, they had a troubled relationship. I didn't really see her as going from somebody who is selfish to somebody who is selfless. I didn't really feel that, because to me, she was just somebody trying to get through her shit. Like, and to me, the whole movie is her trying. Like, so I don't know that I see as much of a narrative for her in there after all, beyond like the surface narrative. So yeah, I really thought that Voight was kind of my biggest detraction for me. I understand that he's there to kind of like show the foil of her, in terms of like, here's what selfishness gets you, here's what selflessness gets you. But I just don't think, I think that he's just too cackly. He's too Phantom of the Opera. He's too Mr. Burns. He's too like on the nose villain, compared to what I consider to be somewhat more grounded individual characters. So that really kind of like put a little bit of a damper on things. I did like the art direction a lot, like overall, not just including the bodies, but everything else. Let's see. Any other notes I had here? I really loved the needle kill. I really loved the Cenobite creation. I really like, looking back, even though I had forgotten about it, the razor wire kill is a cool like alternative to the chains. I like that too, and the way they like wrapped around his arms and stuff and degloved his arm. That's fucking heinous.
That was cool.
Yeah. So like, credit to all that stuff. To me, like, I think that those things that I laid out are just kind of like narrative dampening elements to what is otherwise like a really visually interesting film with some good acting, some good direction, and I wish there was just a little bit more to sink my teeth into afterwards. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5.
3.5 from old Randu.
I loved it.
That is
I gotta watch that episode today.
It's very good.
It's so good.
That's gonna put our aggregate at a 3.5. Let's jump into our Rotten Tomatoes segment and see what the critics and users think about Hellraiser 2020 Deuce.
Certified.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Rotten Tomatoes segment, in which I'm going to have these three gentlemen guess within the best of their abilities what the aggregate positive scores are from both critics and users on RottenTomatoes.com for Hellraiser 2022. So, Michael, I know we kind of like contacted you late in the game. Are you familiar with what Rotten Tomatoes is saying about this, or no?
I was up until the actual launch of the movie, before they got the users,
Okay.
the critics. I know the critics have changed, so I haven't looked at it in a day or two.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to like have you guess last on both, just because you have maybe a little sneak preview as to what the scores are. But that sounds like there's been some distance, and God knows it's so fresh that it's changing every day still. So
fresh.
There's a lot at stake here. We got to make sure the game is super clean.
Gotta keep it clean.
Listen, the amount of bitching that'll happen if Justin feels slighted
from Bob.
Oh yeah,
Bob gets really cranky when he doesn't get a skeet.
Moving along. All right, Juice, let's start with you since you're so chatty today. There are 100 I guess 100 flat reviews from critics on
Whoa.
Rotten Tomatoes right now. So how many of those were positive is going to be the percentage, you guess?
I think it's going to be positive. So I think I'm going for certified fresh today. Think it's going to be a little capped. It's not super accessible. But I'm going to take my boys, the boys, Project 86.
Ooh. All right, Bob, how about you? Where are you going to land on this?
I'm gonna go certified freak, 8 days a week or whatever.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
a good
8
guess.
days a week.
I've always been a creeper.
That's a good guess, Juice. I think it might be slightly lower than that, but not by much. I'll go with an 82, please.
82. All right. You guys are really close there. Michael, where are you landing on this?
We
do
had
you think the
86
critics
and
are landing on?
82.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
correct.
Last time I looked, it was higher than both of those, but I'm sure it did also didn't have 100 reviews.
Mm.
So I'm gonna go down a bit, and because I know this has been getting its stereotypical hate. But I'm gonna go against my better judgment. I'm gonna go in between and say 83.
Whoa.
83, right in the middle. Okay. So we have 86 from Juice, 82 from Bob, and 83 from Michael. Well, guess what, fellas? You know what the score is?
69, dude.
No shit.
Is it really?
69%. Dead on the
69
money, which is both
dudes.
appropriate and inappropriate because I feel it should be higher.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Bob?
No more reviews need to come in.
Yeah.
That's disappointing.
Hell ski.
Yeah,
you
now I'm
skeet
not
this
cranky.
week.
I'm not
That's-
cranky.
Bob, you got it. Don't be cranky. My God, Alice needs to sleep at night. Okay.
Bob's on the couch these days. You didn't hear?
The crying couch, they call it.
The
Bob,
weeping.
why don't we start with you for the audience score? There's over 500 audience scores on here, so a good hunk of people have weighed in. What do you think that those people, the people that we would represent supposedly, what do you think
We represent the
Gotta
500
represent
people.
the people?
The people. Man, I feel like this is probably going to be higher than the critics. This doesn't feel like critics are going to love it necessarily, but I think mostly from what I've been seeing on like online and shit, I think people dig this for the most part. So I think it'll be higher than 69. I'll go. I'll take an 80. Give me an 80.
80. Okay. Juice, how about you?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say they like it too, but also I feel like there's just gonna be a bunch of wieners out there just complaining about it to complain. So 69 I'll take 69 dudes. I'll double down.
Oh man.
Wow.
69, dudes.
All right. Michael, where do you think those wieners are pulling us down to?
I have spent the last few days fighting
Fighting
in
the good
forums
fight.
and Reddit and
The
Oh my
culture
God.
war veteran is weighing in.
I have not seen so much hate for this movie as I have lately, but I'm gonna go lower and I'm gonna say 60.
60. All right.
I'll
Yeah,
$1
well-
everybody.
Everybody, well, I guess what? Michael, you're gonna take this one away for us, buddy. It's 64% positive.
Whoa.
Lower.
I'm
than
actually
the
surprised
critics.
it's that high.
Yeah.
Oh my lord.
That surprised me. I mean, I've only heard positive things about this movie myself, so I was expecting a very, very high score.
Michael,
Um,
what kind of victory chant would you like today? My God.
Surprise me. It's all good.
Hell
That's right.
yeet.
There
Of
you
course.
go.
Going on it.
Of course.
Not gonna
I'm gonna
give
go
you a
with this
hell
one.
yeet.
Come to daddy.
Oh,
Michael deserves a hell skeet, and we all know it. I mean, it's fitting for
God
this
damn.
movie.
Bob
above
wants
all
to
other
give
movies.
you skeet.
It's
no,
fired-
thank you. No, thank you,
Wow.
Bob.
It's from the Hell Priestess.
All right. Moving right
It's
along.
funny. It's funny
Go
that
ahead.
you keep playing the Come to Daddy one. Because I showed this to my girlfriend, the first one. I showed it to her, probably one of the first dates we ever got together, and she
Here's what
hated
you're
it.
in for.
Yeah.
Exactly. She hated it, and she spent probably about 2 weeks that come to daddy. She hated it.
to daddy.
She's like, that is the creepiest fucking thing I've ever heard. Don't ever do that again. So she watched this one today, and she said she loved it. So
Oh, good.
There you go.
So you're still together then. Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
I feel like this one's a lot more accessible.
Yeah, I love that "come to daddy" line though, because the way he says it, it's like it's dripping out of his mouth. Come to
Yeah.
daddy.
Oh, God.
Come to daddy.
Come to daddy.
That's Frank, right?
yeah.
The critics' consensus reads as follows: a gift for long-suffering fans. After numerous subpar sequels, David Bruckner's Hellraiser unlocks the puzzle box for getting this franchise back on the right track. Hellraiser is swinging into theaters.
I
There we
like
go.
the idea of this too, because it really adds like limitless possibilities for the idea of sequels.
hmm
You can go anywhere. You don't really need to follow like these characters or whatever. The box goes where it goes. So I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
And the fact now that we have 6 different configurations, we have 6 different
Mhm.
possible endings, you
Mhm.
know, I like the possibility that we're going to get some sequels.
Yeah. Down for
It'd be nice to see what different motivators that get people to the end of the 6
Yeah.
phases, like
Mhm.
how that'll. Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I think that
I
if they're-
want to see
if-
somebody banging a Cenobite by the end of this series.
We're gonna get done, dudes.
That's what I
Um,
want on screen.
I don't think you're
All
going
right.
to get that.
Let's read a negative review and see if it's funny or if Michael blows a gasket. Gestures at similar ideas and borrows familiar plot points, but makes the classic reboot mistake of adding too much story to what should have been a more concentrated reimagining of the Pinhead universe. How do you feel about that phrase, the Pinhead universe?
Oh no.
That seems like
For-
very much like Dad's weighing in on movies today.
Well, the fact that Clive Barker hates the name Pinhead is
Mm.
I hate the use of the name Pinhead.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, no, he said since the first movie that the moniker Pinhead was demeaning towards the character, and it was always in Hellbound Heart, it was listed as the lead Cenobite, and from then on, I mean, he ran with the name Pinhead because everybody did it, but he preferred Hell Priest and Hell Priest or Hell Priest.
Well, I will use the preferred name then. Hell Priest, welcome to the resistance. Here's another.
Whoever the
ahead.
reviewer is has a point. I mean, it did try to add a lot more story, and most people want more Cenobite. But when you go back and look at the 1987 one, it was all story and 10 minutes
Yeah.
of Cenobite. So
Yeah,
It's actually
I didn't
one of
know
my
that it
biggest
became all
critiques.
Cenobites.
Yeah, of Hellraiser, because there's all that Frank being goopy.
Yeah.
Goopy old
Here's
Frank in
another
the
negative
attic.
review. One more for the road. It takes the most surface level aspects of the original story and gnarls them into a bloated, forgettable modern horror slog that fumbles through the series mythology.
that sounds like somebody had a thesaurus at hand.
Yeah. There's a lot of those in these negative reviews. Okay, got a deadline to keep. What do I want to say about fucking Cenobites? All right, yeah, that's it for our Rotten Tomato segment. Bob, get on it.
Keeping the beat.
Yes. It is time to talk Cooter of the Week.
Oh shit.
Straight chillin'. Gooder of the week.
Juice. What's Cooter? Why don't we hunt him?
We each need our own like peanut style dance to the Cooters. Cooter's a character type and a straight chillin' exclusive. Cooter must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered a Cooter, but we want the Cooter with the most points. The 5 points of Cooterdom are sexual deviance, manipulation, smug arrogance, overall look and attire, and overall patheticness. In a Hellraiser film, who's going to be our number 1 Cooter?
An embarrassing glut of riches today.
I
I
feel
mean,
like there's
to me-
choices.
I don't really want to jump to the Cenobites. Like, I kind of want to
Yeah.
go with a human character, just because. I mean,
Oh
the
yeah.
Cenobites are.
You want to go
Voight?
with
kind of
I
established.
mean, yeah.
Wait, is it Hoyt? Voight? What
No.
is it?
Voight.
Voight. I wouldn't go Voight.
No?
What?
I don't
You
know,
think
man.
so?
It's a pretty pathetic dude. It's my first choice.
He is.
I think.
It's
But
pathetic.
when you throw in sexual deviancy, I'm thinking it's got to be Trevor. He used his sexual attractiveness for Riley to lure her into the whole thing. He's pathetic. He has the attire. He's one step away from looking like he's homeless. So no, for me
Man.
it's Trevor all the way. I think he hits nearly every single point.
Okay, so
I
here's
didn't know
what
you
we
were
got.
such
We
a
got
fashionista.
Trevor versus Voight. Voight?
Voight was stylish.
Yes,
the only
you
thing he
got-
had, the only thing Voight had really was that he was an asshole and he was manipulative. But I mean,
And
he was
smug
he was
arrogance.
Smug
the
arrogance. Yeah, he like traps demons and like sasses them to their face.
He's like a big petulant, like rich boy. He's like fucking
Yeah.
Francis from Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
But
So
he dressed really well, even when he had that gigantic piston thing going through his
how do you change your
midsection. He dressed
clothes?
really well. He there was no sexual deviancy from him personally that we saw. So
That's true.
He did have
Although
a
he
giant
did-
orgy of sex
But he-
workers in his
That's-
other room.
that
That's
was
not
just to lure
inherently-
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Eh.
seems consensual as far as
That
we
seemed
know.
consensual to
anyway.
me, yeah, and except until the murders started. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
the manipulation is kind of the heavy one for him, because he ultimately, like, that's kind of like, this is kind of going back to my original complaint about him, is he's just mustache twirly. He doesn't really have
Yeah.
much besides "I'm gonna fuck things up for you" going for him. I don't know.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's
He's got a
fair.
pretty dope
he was my
sex
natural
dungeon.
instinct, though. He also like has that X factor of just like,
Yeah.
man, I want to see this guy get it. I just want to see this
Yeah,
guy
sure.
get it.
Yeah.
Like,
But you
that he
also
has.
want to see Trevor kind of get it too.
Especially
end,
after the
yeah.
reveal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, Trevor. Okay, sexual deviance and manipulation together. Yeah, he picks one good point that the brother mentions early is like, who dates someone from their 12-step program or whatever. So like
Yep.
picking up people that are like kind of down on their luck, or that's pretty deep
Well, yeah.
manipulation.
pathetic and manipulative. Yeah,
Michael might have a good point. Trevor might
Mhm.
beat it out. Yeah, he's got. I don't
I don't
know
know
if I
about the
give him
look
the
and
look and
attire.
attire. Yeah, I think
He seems about standard for some
But I
hipster in
think
the city to me.
he definitely does hit on the rest. Manipulation. I don't know about smug arrogance though either. Is he super arrogant? Because he even like kind of feels bad about it.
Yeah, he tries to take the
Mm.
box away from her at one point, which I
Yeah.
assume is like a somewhat, or at least a turn on what his original goal was, because he could have,
Mhm.
like, she wasn't cut at that point. She wasn't involved beyond,
He never like
starting the ball rolling.
demeans her. Like from a smug arrogance point, he never like talks down to her or anybody. He never like throws
Mhm.
his weight around or anything. So I think he hits three. Maybe him and Voight are like tied at a solid
I
three.
think maybe they're a package deal. They got a
Yeah.
little bit of a
we
of
love a good
partnership
package.
going. Mm.
Yes, we do.
Well, Voight doesn't have one anymore, according to the end of this movie. So I think we package them up. I say we
Alright.
bundle this deal.
Lock
do you
them
think?
up,
Let's-
boys.
We got a bundle of cooters. Woo! We got them.
Yeah.
We figured it out. Hallelujah. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about what we've been watching this week.
Hey gang, what you been watching?
Michael, have you been watching anything else other than this hot new Hellraiser flick?
Yes, actually. I now that I bought a new Fire Stick, I've been kind of binging everything I possibly can. Discovered a series from the late 90s. Series, it's only 2 movies. Late 90s, early 80s, or late 90s, early 2000s, called Screamers. The second one even had Stephen Amell from Arrow in it. It was basically a story of this planet, Sirius 6B, that they get these, I don't know what you would call them, like robotic creatures that are supposed to be for security, and then they end up becoming sentient and recreating themselves. And in the first movie, they recreated themselves into small children to get into like these encampments, and then they would just destroy and kill everything they possibly could. Kind of like Terminator-ish. It was okay. Lance Henriksen, Stephen Amell, oh my god, I can't believe I'm
Peter
drawing a
Weller?
blank. Peter Weller, exactly.
I
In
was
the first
looking
one.
it up.
Okay. I was like, I can't believe I forgot who played RoboCop. But Peter Weller was in it. Pretty decent movie. The first one. Second one was a cheap knockoff. Let's see, I binge watched Abbott Elementary. I'm all caught up on that.
Oh.
So much. I can't remember everything, but yeah, Screamers is probably the newest one. I watched those two yesterday.
Right on, man. Cool. Randy, what you been watching?
Oh, I have a long list because we didn't cover it last week. I'll try to be speedy. I found randomly this old, I don't know, I think it's an English animated, I don't know, special or whatever, called Ghost Stories from the Pickwick Papers, which is a Charles Dickens unfinished short story novella sort of thing. I don't know. There's several like ghost stories involved. So that I found to be pretty fucking awesome because it had that beautiful like VHS like weathering to it. Like it was clearly recorded off someone's VHS tape or something. It had like sort of like somewhat cheap animation that kind of seemed a little stilted and weird. So it had an extra creepy factor that hits just right for me, as well as having like, pretty, fun like Ichabod Crane level like horror tales and ghost tales. That honestly, like, and it was clearly very faithful to what Charles Dickens wrote. I would have to assume, because it was in all of the nomenclature of that time period and all that sort of thing. I was impressed with it. I liked it. It's all on YouTube. Ghost Stories from the Pickwick Papers. I recommend it as a family friendly horror endeavor for Halloween. I think it's a nice fit. I finally saw The Clove Hitch Killer. I did not know that fucking what's his dick from American Horror Story was in that. I found it to be a little bit, like, to borrow something Rob said earlier about Hellraiser, I thought it was definitely a little bit CW teen lit level handling of the fucking BTK killer, which seems weird and off-putting to me in retrospect. At the time, it was like, it's fine. I don't know. I don't think I'm a big fan of that movie personally. Rewatched American Psycho, still just as good. Rewatched Halloween 5 just so I could have something on in the background as I worked on my daily drawings, and I still have a soft spot for that. It still hits a nice Halloween feeling for me, even though it's bad. I also watched I Still Know What You Did Last Summer because I just needed to put something on and it's not stop working. That's one of the earlier earlier slasher movies that I did see. So I again have a little bit of fondness for it in spite of everything about it. So yeah, I did that. I watched Smile. I don't know about that one.
Frown.
I watched Hocus Pocus 2. It's about what you'd expect. It's not particularly engaging to me, but I became fond of Hocus Pocus, but I was never like initially that into it. So maybe this will have its own little like resurgence later down the line. But for me, it was like, sorry, the minute Bette Midler's on stage, she's singing, I don't need to see this. Like, this isn't made for me.
I still haven't watched it.
I watched Werewolf by Night, which I loved the first half of that, and then it kind of just slowly became a Marvel action show instead of a pastiche of horror to me. It lost its luster. I wish they would have like full scale committed for the whole runtime, but they didn't. So it's good, not great.
Are we still in spoiler territory here?
We usually try to like
spoil the
not for other things.
Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries.
just for the movie in question. Yeah. And then last but not least, I am just finished the second episode of Midnight Club. I'm enjoying that greatly. I really like the way Flanagan writes shit, and I really respect that he's trying to take what is essentially like a young adult horror and give it some sort of, like, not talk down to his audience for this. It really, you can really feel that, and I respect the fuck out of it. So far so good on that. We'll see if he maintains pace. That's it for me.
Sweet. Juice, what you been watching?
Oh, I watched The Halloween Tree, which is written and narrated by Ray Bradbury. This is a blind spot for me, but I enjoyed it. Especially like the opening 10 minutes. It kind of reminded me of the same way that like the opening of like Halloween 4 feels, or like the opening of Over the Garden Wall. It's just like soaked in autumn goodness, and the kids are going out for Halloween, and so it's great.
This is the 90s animation.
Not yeah, 90s or
80s,
80s.
90s?
Yeah, so yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's like it's pretty short. It's like an hour. It was like a
Mhm.
made for TV kind of thing, special, based on his book. So yeah, solid. I was surprised I'd never seen it before. Rewatch Terrifier. Don't think I'd seen it since we covered it, and actually was kind of disappointed. It was one of those movies that, like, surprisingly, I kept in my. I remember being critical of it when we reviewed it, but had it in my mind of like, it's probably better than I remember it or something. Because I remember that the Art the Clown was like a good performance, and I always said like had a potential for a good sequel because you could do anything with it really. But I was let down. It was worse than I remembered. Terrifier, not great. Watched Over the Garden Wall, wonderful. And in that also watched Tomb of the Unknown, which is like the pilot that they did. Tome, sorry. Thank you. Tome. I know it's spelled Tome. I just Tome. Okay. Tome
It's
of
the
the
Tommy
Unknown.
of the Unknown.
Tommy, what's up? But that's wonderful. Of course, that series, Autumn Goodness, and then even that little short is nice. It's on YouTube if you've never seen that little pilot that they did, and it's pretty on par. It's pretty good. Still, I played some games. I played a little bit of Little Nightmares, great vibes. Played the zombie DLC for Borderlands 1, played the Halloween DLC for Borderlands 2. Great great games to play during spooky season. Watched Sleepy Hollow. I watched the cartoon a couple of weeks ago. I watched the Tim Burton one. I watch it every year. Every year I gotta watch Sleepy Hollow. I watched this like random YouTube video. It's like 15 to 20 minutes of just commercials, Halloween commercials from the 80s and 90s. Wonderful.
That shit's fun.
It's so fun. Shit was like blowing my mind. I was like, oh my God, I remember this when Randy showed me when I was a kid. Haunt. I rewatched Haunt. Now this was weird because I hadn't seen Haunt or Terrifier since we reviewed them, and Haunt I kind of held lower in my mind. Rewatched it, and actually it was better than I remember. I was like, holy shit, this movie's brutal and like really good for Halloween. So Haunt held up. That one was good. And then finally I watched Werewolf by Night, which I thought was solid and fun, and you will get my full thoughts on Thursday. Bo Bear, that's all I've been watching. What you been watching, my guy?
A bunch of new stuff. I finally checked out Hocus Pocus 2, and that is not great. Difficult to get through for sure. I also checked out My Best Friend's Exorcism, which is it's on Amazon.
Me too. Fuck, I forgot about that.
And yeah, it's based off a book. It's like a fun little romp, if I do say so myself. It's not mind blowing necessarily, but like it's sort of a light, breezy little exorcism, like kind of a light spin on an exorcism type of movie. I enjoyed that pretty well. Dark Glasses. Watch that on Shudder. They had like a preview screening of it on Shudder, and Dario Argento's latest film. It's his return to Giallo after God knows how many years, and it's okay. It has a couple like pretty tense sequences, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend going out of your way to watch it. It's fine. Also, Deadstream, currently on Shudder. I checked that out as well. It is a found footage horror comedy movie about this dude who's, I guess he's like a YouTuber, and he gets banned from the website for a while, then eventually like is able to start his channel back up again, And on Halloween, he like goes into this very known, extremely haunted, spooky house, and he does a live stream to sort of like help build his followers back up. And he's got sponsors, and he's trying to make some money and like sort of make amends for this thing that he did. That as the movie progresses, you find out why his channel was canceled. And it starts off really strong. I feel like it kind of loses steam towards the end of it. I really dug how it started, though. They go to like great lengths to sort of explain like how there might be multiple camera angles and how these cameras are triggered, and like any sort of lingering question you might have that, you know, we've discussed regarding other found footage movies, like, well, they'd never hold the camera this long, or well, all of a sudden we got a different shot, or like, where's this background music coming from? Like, all those questions are fucking answered right off the top, and it's like really well thought out, I thought. I don't know that it really sticks to the landing, but it's interesting. I would recommend checking it out. It's on Shudder. Deadstream. That's I watched a couple other bangers that, you know, Over the Garden Wall, of course, Fright Night, you know, shit that we all know rules. But those are the new releases anyways. I definitely wanted to touch on. That's all I've been watching. Let's go ahead and get into our last segment of the show, which is, of course, our Hotline Screams.
Hotline Scream.
If you're listening, would like to call in and leave voicemail to be featured on next week's show, hit us up at 904-638-3231. We got a whole pile of voicemails this week. First up, we're going to hear from our boy Matt. Let's hear what Matt has to say.
Hey guys, this is Matt. I just had a quick question for you. Since y'all watched Pearl last week, and we know that Maxine's coming out next year, I was wondering, when you bring new people to this franchise later, like when the box set drops or something, do you think people should watch X first or Pearl first? Anyway, looking forward to the episode. Y'all have a good day.
Interesting question. I like the sequence they're in personally. I think.
I agree. Because I think yeah, I think it's cooler to watch Pearl and be like, oh shit, I know where she ends up.
Yeah, there's something about, like, I mean, it's easy to be like with prequels in general. It's like, oh, there's no tension because we know how things shake out in the end or whatever. But you don't really.
No.
Not this far in the past. Like, you can't. I don't know. I like adding weight to a character that was already like fine the way she was,
Yeah.
and adding weight that actually I like about it. Like, you know what I mean? It's easy to whiff that, but in the case of this particular franchise, I think they did a great, like, they added some really like nice substantial things to the character. And I liked seeing that sort of retrospectively, and it gave me a reason to go back and rewatch X. So I think I like the sequence it's in. Bob, do you agree?
I agree. Yeah, I think they even do sort of a slight mislead at the very beginning of X, where like you're not sure. You think like the husband might be the bad guy in the movie, and then it's a bit of a surprise when you finally see her snap, and you know she does whatever she does. Yeah, kind of a spoiler.
Yeah, we just decided.
Anyway, that would be spoiled. If you watch Pearl first, things happen. Something happens, and
yeah. I also think I like Pearl a little more than X, and so there's something to be said about watching a film that like is good and then like getting better. That's just my opinion.
Michael, you've seen these films, yeah?
I have not.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
No.
Well,
So Bob spoiled
now
them
you
for
know.
me?
Yeah,
Wow.
way to go, Bob. Fucking
We're
ass.
never gonna get another guest again. They're gonna be
God,
worried you're
the
spoiling
asshole this
movies
week.
over here.
Now that being said, no,
Bob.
I have not seen them, but I have read about them and you know, read reviews and stuff like that. They're on my list to see. I just haven't seen them yet.
Well, I mean, you got to get that 10th viewing of Hellraiser in first, right?
First.
Yeah, I have two more.
First.
Okay, cool.
Nice. Thanks for calling in, Matt.
This
Good
week.
question. Next up, we're going to hear from Anna. Let's hear what she has to say.
What's up, fellas? Anna T here. Just got home from work, turned on AMC Fear Fest, and 13 Ghosts is on. I have a slight surgery-induced lisp from some work I had done on my mouth, so bear with me and don't go in on me too hard. I have a question for you guys. Are any of y'all planning on partaking in the Regal Cinemas re-release of the classic horror movies like Lost Boys, Halloween, Scream 2? I'm going Friday to Knoxville to see Halloween, 1978. And then I'm really excited to go see Scream 2 next week, I think next Monday or Tuesday. I'll be in Chattanooga. Because that was the first scary movie I ever saw in theaters with my mom, who let me watch scary movies way too young, as I'm sure most of our parents did, and I'm doing now with my 6-year-old. But it's really cool. It's going to be cool to go back and watch that now that my mom's gone and kind of reminisce and remember and enjoy it. And I'm going to see Dawn of the Dead in 3D on Halloween weekend. Like, you can't get any better than that. So I just wanted to know if any of you guys were planning on doing that, and if so, which ones are you going to see? Y'all have a good week and keep chilling.
I didn't even pick up on a lisp, so you sound good to me.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I'm in Korea, so I can't do that. But I should check my local theaters to make sure they're not showing any
yeah,
horror
unfortunately,
movies.
the local Regal for me specifically is like just a total fucking madhouse. It's just crammed with teenagers getting in fights and shit. So I tend to go to the recently opened Alamo Draft House here, and they're doing a lot of shit. There's also a repertory movie house called Sun Cinema here that I might go check out some movies at as well. And yeah, I don't know which ones just yet because it's going to be dependent on what day I'm available, but there's pretty much an older classic horror movie playing every day of the week in this area. So I have options. I am going to go to Baltimore as well to see Evil Dead the musical, though, so I'm excited about that.
Whoa, Randu.
I love Evil Dead the musical. That was fantastic.
It's my first time. I'm excited.
Are you catching any of those classics, Michael?
I stopped listening as soon as she said 13 Ghosts.
Wow, 2 mentions.
It's a real trigger warning there.
Yeah. Yeah,
We'll
threw
have
my
you back
headset, waved
on.
you off.
We'll have you back on next week when we cover 13
Ghosts.
From now on, this is a 13 Ghosts only podcast.
I will monopolize that time.
I've had cable in years, but I miss throwing on AMC's Fear Fest. Just coming home and just having it on, whatever they're showing. Yeah, I love that shit, man. I think we were playing Trick or Treat is finally in theaters. Towards the end of this month, I think they're rolling it out, and I think we're gonna try and see that in theaters for the first time, which would be really really cool. But I think that's really the only one I think we're trying to hit as far as the old school.
It's always we now.
Movies.
The royal we now.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally.
How dare you date, you son of a bitch?
Thanks for calling.
It
Anna.
used to be us, Bob, and now it's we.
Always good to hear from you, Anna. List or otherwise, just keep calling. Next up, we're going to hear from our good friend, the librarian. Let's hear what she has to say.
What up, nerds? So I just listened to the Scream 2022 episode. I wanted to share with y'all that I only saw the Scream movies like last month. For reference of why this shocked all of my movie friends, I'm 26, and as you boys can tell, I'm very into horror. Yet somehow I missed spoilers or even a semblance of a plot for all the Scream movies, besides it being a slasher. Like, I didn't know it was meta. I didn't know Stu was a killer. I thought it was only Billy. And the only reason I even knew it was Billy was because he'd be in, like, the top 10 sexy horror villains compilations on Tumblr. I also knew about the Drew Barrymore thing, but that was, like, last year because it was in some research for a paper I wrote. I don't know why I missed the Scream franchise for so long. Like, of the big horror franchises, I know the one that scared me the most when I was getting into horror was Nightmare on Elm Street. So it wasn't for fear. So, I don't know. As for ranking them, for me it goes 1, 3, 5, 2, 4. Reasoning being, I really hate the plot trope of real fans went crazy. Because following that logic, I would have killed whoever did Alien Resurrection. I just think it's corny because I already think, like, real fan culture is already fucking corny. Like, stop gatekeeping horror. You look like a fucking dork. So that's that on that. I watched the new Hellraiser movie. the morning it came out at a crisp 9:05 a.m. I gave it a 3.5, and my non-spoiler review of it was, I need a Hellraiser with midsummer lighting. I felt the lighting was really bad for a lot of the movie, and if y'all ever cover it, I shall call in and explain my rating. I also watched all the Predator movies minus The Predator from 2018, and I'm sorry, I don't get the hype of these movies. Like, besides the Predator alien looking really fucking cool, like, my favorite in the franchise so far is Prey. Like, I really don't get it. I'm sorry. So yeah, that's what I've been watching. I reread Pet Sematary recently, by recently I mean last night. And it was funny because I had forgotten most of the plot because I had first read it in high school, so it was nice to be, like, shocked by, like, a book I had already read. So, yeah. Love y'all. Bye!
Boy, that was some rapid-paced hot takes in there.
I'm
loved
going to
it.
recommend decaf.
She called in and was like, I can't believe the Scream franchise wasn't spoiled for me. It was so great. And then proceeds to spoil it for anybody else.
We love it.
Yeah, we've had 3 major spoilers on this.
That's
and I had to
what,
stop Michael from the werewolf spoiler.
We're talking about 20-year-old movies here and plus.
It's true.
So,
it's true.
Well,
yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
that was my bad. That's not a big of a deal. Just
did
giving you a hard
she
time
say
for sure.
Scream 1, 3, 2, 5, 4?
5, 4.
That is quite the list.
I thought she said 5 was second.
I think
she might have said 5 second.
3.
I thought she said
I recall
1, 5.
3.
I think she said
135 or
3.
153. I think is one or the other. But
either way,
whatever.
I need to know why 3 is so high. That's
3 is like that's the
3
black
not
sheep for sure.
Yeah,
Wow.
interesting.
I understand the logic though about like I mean nobody wants to be maligned for being a horror fan, especially by other horror fans. That seems a little silly, but at the same time, it elevates the horror fan as well. So
it does, and it's commenting on how ridiculous people who act that way are. That's the point of it, highlighting it. It's not like encouraging people to do it. Say this is fucking dumb, right? I dig it, but it's the 5th installment in a franchise. Like, yeah. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
I'll die loving Predator though. Like it's so simple. At least the original and Prey certainly. I don't know, man. Like so simple. Doesn't need to be much more than it is. Deadliest game plus an alien. Love it.
Yeah. I also like just we don't get enough fusion, especially these days, of the action horror. So I like a little action horror fusion.
Lots of great lines. Sexual Tyrannosaurus et al.
Yeah.
Juice is a fusion, man. Yeah. Thanks for calling in, librarian.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Killing the banter today.
I don't know anything. Thanks for calling, librarian. Always good to hear from you. That was a lot of shit you've been watching. Keep up the good work, staying in the Halloween spirit there. Damn, and reading, yeah. That's all the voicemails we got. Again, if you guys are listening and want to leave a voicemail for next week, hit us up at 904-638-3231. Do you guys have any prompts you want to throw out for next week's show?
What's everybody pitch to us the next Cinnabite?
Ooh.
What's the next Cinnabite's name and appearance and method of kill?
Also, too, since this is a trend, what franchise needs to be revised and can be easily done well that has just fallen?
The answer is none.
Well, we've seen like Predator, Prey was great. Now Hellraiser.
But there's a difference between could be done well and needs to be made.
None of it needs to be made.
Well, I don't know. Some franchise need to be pulled out of the dirt. Like Child's Play could. Well, they did that one a couple years ago. That was okay, I guess.
They did a remake. Yeah. The thing is, the vast majority of like reboots or remakes are pretty fucking middling. So like, you don't really need to do it.
Well,
original shit, please.
Like if there's a shitty movie out there that could be remade, nobody's gonna do it.
Just shit all over my prompt, I guess.
Your
That's
prompt
fine.
is
That's cool. I'm garbage. I'm a piece of shit. I should.
Hey man,
Justin,
keep going. Keep going.
You're
just.
I'll just shut
you're
my
just filling in the
stupid
blanks.
fucking mouth and never.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint licker?
Yeah. I do like the Cinnabite question. I think that's a pretty interesting question. Yeah,
But
pitch us
not
Cinnabite.
Juice's dumb,
Not Juice's
stupid
questions
question.
really, really bad.
What
Fucking
would
bad.
what would each of our Cinnabite be? Who am I as a Cinnabite? Who is
Uh-oh.
Juice as a Cinnabite? Who is
Whoa.
Bob as a Cinnabite?
We know Bob's some kind of
Ooh.
ass man. What's going on?
He's just a literal butt face pooping out of his face.
I like to
onto you.
imagine there's this weird tube coming out of his
Damn.
butt, and it's just constantly spilling shit all over his face.
like the Tim and Eric
God
bit.
damn.
I love to imagine that.
I
love to imagine that.
I love doing it.
Is my number one fantasy.
Yes. Yes. All right. Yeah. Hit us up 904-638-3231. Michael, thanks so much for sitting in with us this week, man. We really do appreciate your time. You want to remind everybody?
I loved on my drive to work today getting a phone call or a text message from a number I didn't recognize saying, "Hey, do you want to talk about Hellraiser?" My first thought was, "Fuck yeah, let's do it." And then it was, "Who's this again?"
It depends. Are you one of the people I pissed off on a forum? Are you going to murder me?
That is exactly what went down. He said, "Absolutely." And then was like, "Wait, who the fuck are you?" Yeah. You want to remind everybody where to find your show?
Yeah, we're pretty much based everywhere. You can find our past episodes on Google Podcasts, Apple, iHeartRadio, Anchor, pretty much everywhere. Facebook, if you want to check us out visually, which you're looking at me now, don't worry about that. It's not anything special.
It's honestly so beautiful, man.
Right.
Thank you.
Ever since I started shaving my head, right?
This is what people need.
Sights to show you.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be back next week with a brand new show. As always, we're talking about the latest and greatest from David Gordon Green. We're closing out the Bond Me trilogy with Halloween Ends. Long time coming. Finally
and
closing
the
out the trill.
Until next time.
Yeah, it's definitely ending for sure. Until then, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at STR8_chilling, on Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. Send us an email at straightchillingpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to join in on our daily Slack channel conversations, hit us up in one of those social media outlets, and I'll send you a link so you can do so. Don't forget about our Chilloween party this Friday, October 14th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We're dropping that Zoom link on Patreon for you to join. Throw on your costumes, brush up on your horror trivia, and be prepared to chill. Until next week, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.
Come to daddy.